Well, while the Crimean authorities were asking Russia for help, the leader of Ukraine's far-right group, the Pravy Sektor, reached out to the Chechen terrorist Doku Umarov, urging him to support Ukraine and step up the fight against Russia. Well, Umarov is the Islamist leader of the Chechen extremist movement and an international terrorist, Russia's equivalent of Osama bin Laden. He's responsible for deadly terrorist attacks across Russia that have taken the lives of dozens of civilians, including bombings on the Moscow metro and at Domodedovo International Airport in Moscow. Doku has also encouraged the separatist movement in Chechnya by declaring it an Islamic state. He's currently wanted in Russia on charges of kidnapping, murder and treason. Well, Mark Sloboda, he's still with me here as he monitors the rapidly moving developments there in Ukraine. And Mark, for the final time today, interesting to get your thoughts about this development with Umarov. The Russian Foreign Ministry, they've responded to this, say this is exactly the nature of the groups that the West, of course, have been supporting to get into power in Kiev. So will this extraordinary reach out to the Chechen Islamist leader make any impact whatsoever on the West's response now on how they deal with that newly appointed, self-appointed parliament in Kiev?
Okay, well, I think it should be said that there's not any direct evidence that the West has in particular supported the Pravy Sektor or other groups. They have supported the more moderate politicians who accepted and cynically used the violence of these right-wing groups in an attempt to ride the tiger of their violence into power. So it's a cynical game that was being played on behalf of both the opposition leaders, who are nominally now the head of the government, and the West who backed those leaders. While everyone knowing that the real force, and continues to be the real force that politically dominates the Maidan, and that now, as a military group, controls the streets of Kiev and runs nightly raids elsewhere across the country to try to occupy buildings, destroy statues, and whatever the pogroms that they are conducting against Communist and Party of Region members. That is the real power, and that is probably one of the primary reasons why both the South and the East, the citizens, knowing full well who these groups are, what they represent, and their rhetoric about either killing or kicking the Russian ethnics out of the Ukraine, and both the Russian government knowing full well this alliance, this devil's alliance between Doku Umarov, the Islamic Jihad that goes back to the First Chechen War, and these right-wing ultranationalist forces from the Western Ukraine.
But a step too far, surely, for the
Certainly
leader of the far-right group,
indicative
who's part of the Kiev parliament, to make that move.
Yeah, part of the cabinet. Yarosh has been given the position of the deputy to the Security and Defense Council, and his close ally, also a former neo-Nazi, Pravy, is the head of the Security and Defense Council. So there's no way that Russia could not regard this as indicative of the extremism of this putsch regime in Kiev, and of the danger it represents not only to the people of the Ukraine, but also to the national security of the Russian Federation.
Another call from Kiev, and that is for mobilization in response to the possible deployment of Russian troops in Kiev. Are we looking at war here?
No, I don't think, there's no indication at this point that we are looking at a war between Russia and the Ukraine. There hasn't been any reports of any serious amount of conflict so far. The engagements that have been with Crimean self-defense forces, and President Putin hasn't even officially deployed Russian troops outside of their stated position right now of guarding Russian Black Sea facilities and other buildings at the behest of the Prime Minister of the Autonomous Republic of the Crimea within. So there's no indication of any state-on-state conflict, and indeed the inability of this putsch regime so far to mobilize any military or intelligence forces against Russia, and these possible defections that we've been talking about indicate that there's no real possibility of this perhaps in the future. Who would die for this government? that has overthrown a democratically elected president. I can't see the young men in uniform, many of them in the Ukraine, be willing to die for this regime.
You've been on air on and off for the last 4 hours with me, and we've been seeing these dramatic events unfold there in Crimea and Ukraine. Your predictions finally, where is it heading in the next 24 hours, indeed in the next few days?
Okay. Well, I think the Western leaders, when they began backing this Euro-Maidan movement, they were attempting to recreate a second color revolution, a second orange revolution in the Ukraine. They hoped that while the Russian president was distracted with the Sochi Olympics, that they would be able to bring this putsch regime into power, and that Russia would be forced to accept it as a fait accompli, as facts on the ground. They even had the temerity, the arrogance, to then demand to request that Russia continues giving $15 billion in economic aid to keep up the economy of this putsch regime, which is quite politically and geopolitically orientated against them. So Obama played a hand, and I think once again, as we've seen several times recently, he suffered a major diplomatic defeat because they didn't properly assess the red line that this interference within the Ukraine would present to the Russian Federation. They underestimated President Putin's reaction, and I think right now we've got a situation where Russia has taken steps that have really surprised the Western leaders and have definitively taken control of the situation and has a real possibility of returning a stable and situation for the people of the Ukraine and perhaps down the road a sane and responsible government to the Ukrainian people.
Mark Sloboda, thank you very much indeed for joining us with your thoughts here
Thank you
in the
for having
studio.
me.